US President Donald Trump is urging the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed.
The Trump administration has been increasing pressure on the South American country over the past few months. Well, earlier I asked Politico's national security reporter, Eric Bazail-Eimil, about what's been fueling the tension.
It's very difficult to know if at this point we're on the track of continued negotiations with Venezuela and this is a direct threat and an effort to put more pressure on Maduro to actually cede power and begin a transition towards a democracy, or if this is the actual signal that within the next 24, 48, maybe even 72 hours, we will see airstrikes on Venezuela. The problem has been that we've been seeing a lot of conflicting reports, certainly strong words coming from the White House, but also reports that the president spoke to Maduro on the phone late last week, and that there was the possibility of an in-person meeting. So it's left a lot of confusion as people are trying to figure out where exactly is this going and at what point do we move from threats to the actual, warning of an imminent military strike on land target.
We know that Maduro is a longtime foe of President Trump. We know, too, that if President Trump was to try to instigate regime change, he would definitely need some help within Venezuela itself, from within the country itself. Do you think President Trump would be able to achieve what past U.S. leaders have been unable to do, and that is regime change?
It's a very, very unclear question. The reality is that it comes down to whether the president can put enough pressure on Venezuelan elites that are supporting Maduro in order to finally force Maduro to step aside voluntarily, or to then make the motions themselves to oust Maduro. And the reality is they've seen this movie before. In 2019, there was some degree of military deployment, certainly not to the same level we're seeing right now, during the crisis around Juan Guaido. And there was maximum economic pressure and there was political pressure. And Maduro managed to convince Venezuelan elites at that point that it was scary, but they could get through it. And they did get through it, and they're still in power today. So a lot of it comes down to whether he can sufficiently rattle elites. And that's been the theory behind why kinetic military strikes, striking alleged drug trafficking installations on Venezuelan soil, has been discussed at this point, that it would escalate, our efforts in the United States to pressure Venezuela to a level we haven't seen before, and really make that start to happen.
Is there a mood for war among Americans against Venezuela?
It is very, very unpopular right now. Poll after poll finds, and this includes members of the president's party, do not support military intervention in Venezuela, even if it's framed around, supporting, the Venezuelan opposition or promoting democracy. Americans are very weary of military adventurism, especially after the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And there are worries that this could spiral out of control, that ousting Maduro may foment more instability in the region, create a bigger migratory crisis. We've already seen 6 million Venezuelans leave their country over the last decade, and that certainly could worsen if a worse regime than Maduro's takes power, or if the country is just more ungovernable. So there is a lot of angst about the after effects.
We know that President Trump is a transactional president. Is there something that Maduro of Venezuela can give to the Trump administration that perhaps would see the U.S. military back down?
At this point, it seems that the only thing that'll satisfy President Trump is to actually see Maduro leave power. There is a particular enmity towards Maduro from Trump and within the administration. This is actually a point that's been discussed more recently, but Venezuela was part of President Trump's conspiracy theories about how he allegedly, won the 2020 election, but it was stolen from him. Venezuela was one of the villains in that narrative that he and his allies wove in 2020. And so that enmity is very deep. There's also the practical political considerations that they don't want to pursue this and not see a man that they have made an adversary stay in power, and say that, Maduro can then say, like, he's beaten the United States twice. So barring a scenario where Maduro leaves power, there's not much that they've offered. They've already tried deportations in terms of collaborating with the United States to accept more deportees. They've already tried offering oil reserves and critical minerals, and that hasn't won them any favors with the White House. So really, at this point, it comes down to whether Maduro will stay or go.
Very interesting indeed. Eric Bazail-Eimil there, national security reporter from Politico. We thank you so much for sharing your insight with us.
Thanks for having me.